Hello everyone, this is Estella Balderas. We were having some technical issues. Sorry for that. Today we are hosting the Center for Conflict Resolution, the Mediation, Grievance, and Conflict Resolution Training Resources for Part A providers. Just so you know, we will be taking questions. You can ask your questions in the chat, or you can hold off until the end of the session and we'll open up the lines at that point. Again, you can ask your questions in chat or towards the end. So today we have Cassie, Ray, and Perry from the Center for Conflict Resolution. 1 second, please.
Mute off. All guests have been muted.
All right, so hi everyone, I'm Cassie Lively. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Conflict Resolution. Glad to have a chance to speak with all of you this morning. I'm going to start by just giving a little bit of background information about the Center for Conflict Resolution, or CCR, as an agency, and talk a little bit about the breadth of work that we do outside of the services we provide through Part A, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ray and Perry to talk a little bit more specifically about the work that we do in that context. So the Center for Conflict Resolution is a community mediation center. Our mission is to work with individuals, courts, communities, and other institutions to manage and resolve conflict. We do that primarily through providing mediation services and also through providing mediation training. We use a facilitative model of mediation. So our mediators don't evaluate the cases that we work on. They don't provide solutions for the parties. They don't act as a judge or an attorney within the process. Instead, they work with clients through a facilitative process to help parties think through what's most important to them in a conflict, and then to assess potential solutions to their conflict that are going to work for all of the parties involved. The sort of founding of the Center for Conflict Resolution, we've been around since 1979, and we're started as a project of the Young Lawyers section of the Chicago Bar Association. The folks involved there had really kind of identified that the traditional court process, especially for people of limited means or people who are representing themselves, was, expensive, time-consuming, and intimidating. In general, just not easy to access for people. And so their idea for how to address that problem was to provide mediation as an alternative way to settle disputes and resolve conflicts. So the Center for Conflict Resolution opened initially as a storefront in the uptown neighborhood of Chicago, and the hope was that people would hear about mediation and bring their conflicts to CCR before pursuing them in court. What we found at the time, and what's still true today, is that people still really sort of think about court as the first option for resolving their disputes. And so during the 1980s and through today, CCR developed close relationships with the Circuit Court of Cook County, moved our offices downtown, although we provide services on site all throughout Cook County. And at this point, about 85% of the cases that we mediate are referred through the court in some fashion. So we mediate just under 2,000 cases every year, and we work with clients in a really wide variety of different types of disputes, everything from small claims, eviction, foreclosure. We do a lot of work with families, in particular with parents who are trying to work out how to divide parenting time and decision making. We work with families on guardianship of adults and minors. We do a restorative justice-based victim offender mediation program for court-involved youth. So the mediation model that we use, we can apply to help in a whole lot of different types of disputes that people might find themselves in. We also do large group facilitation and work on issues like conflicts within condo associations or condo boards, neighborhood groups, other nonprofits. So we can work not only with 2 or 3 people who are in conflict, but also with larger groups of people who are grappling with with a difficult issue. We're able to do all the work that we do in large part because in addition to our staff, we have a really large core of dedicated volunteers. And the volunteer mediators are the folks who perform the vast majority of the actual mediations that we do. All of our volunteers go through a really intensive 40-hour mediation skills training that teaches them the foundations of how to mediate a case. And then in addition to that, the folks who actually want to volunteer for us go through a 3-month mentorship period where they're paired up with one of our most experienced mediators. They do additional simulated mediation sessions. They observe actual clients in mediation, really get a lot of intensive exposure to the process. And then before they work with any of our clients, they pass a skills-based test, really, which is a simulated mediation session to make sure that they are really good at the skills that we've taught them and that they can utilize all of the different mediation tools effectively. We also, as I mentioned, provide a lot in terms of training services. So in addition to that 40-hour training that I referenced that actually teaches folks how to be a mediator, we also do a lot of really highly customizable workshops with a whole bunch of different types of audiences. So we work with universities, law firms, corporations, other nonprofits to do shorter workshops, anything from an hour to a couple of days, addressing topics like having difficult conversations, giving effective feedback, general skills for workplace conflict resolution, general communication skills. Really, those trainings can be targeted to whatever issue an organization feels is relevant for their participants. And so that's kind of similar to the training work that we offer 4 times a year under Ryan White that Perry will address in more detail in a second here. As far as funding, we have a number of program-specific grants, and so our partnership with Maytech and the Public Health Institute of Metropolitan Chicago to provide services under Ryan White is one of those partnerships. We also get grant funding for specific programs through organizations like the United Way, the Polk Brothers Foundation, the Illinois Equal Justice Foundation, the Chicago Bar Foundation. We generate revenue through our training services with the general public and with private organizations. We do fundraising, both with individuals and with corporations and law firms. And then we're able to work specifically with funding for some of our programs like this. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ray Carizzi, who is our programs director, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the services that we offer through the hotline.
Thanks, Kathy. So under the Ryan White Act, the Center for Conflict Resolution operates a grievance line, and you may have seen posters for this particular grievance line, sometimes also referred to as the CARE line or the CARE hotline. The number is 1-866-CARE-212. And in operating that grievance line, we actually do a number of different things with the folks who might call in to use it. So one of the main things that we end up doing is assisting clients in navigating the agency's grievance process. So most of the agencies under Ryan White Act already have an internal grievance process of some kind, but we find that clients in a number of situations either aren't aware of the grievance process or have not taken the correct steps to access the grievance process. And so what we will do is attempt to assist them in getting in contact with the right person at the agency and accessing those resources so that their grievance can accurately be filed and reviewed. In some cases, the client has accessed the agency grievance process and is just disappointed with how it's worked out. So we might be pointing them in the direction of opportunities for appeal or for reaching out to other individuals at the agency that may be able to help the client in regards to whatever might have happened in relation to their grievance process. In other cases, where there might not be a formal grievance process, we offer a phone conciliation. So in all of these cases, what happens is that the client will call the hotline and leave a message, and we phone back And we speak with the client, and they essentially tell us the grievance and what's been happening. We then work with them to figure out who the right contact person is at the agency so that we can attempt to assist them in resolving it. In a lot of the calls that we get, it's really a matter of misinformation or lack of communication, and our assistants can often help connect the client with the person that they need to speak to have their complaint remedied. So what we will do is then reach out to the individual at the agency for the phone conciliation to talk to them about what might be happening and see if they can assist us in getting the client connected to the right resources. In some cases where the client and the agency are on board, we offer a mediation where a representative from the agency as well as the individual client come to our office and have a mediation with a neutral third-party mediator in an attempt to see if they can resolve the dispute in a way that's going to work for all of them. And an important thing to note about these different types of services that are available under the Ryan White Act is that they're not limited simply to the clients that are receiving services in your agency. The hotline can also be accessed by staff. For example, a situation between coworkers who are, not getting along well, we might be contacted and reach out and provide the two coworkers with an opportunity for a mediation to see if they can resolve whatever might be happening between them. Or sometimes the staff member might be the person who reaches out to say, I'm having a challenging dynamic with this particular client, to see if mediation might be a good fit in resolving that communication dispute. So some common issues that clients call us about are simply difficulty communicating with case managers, which I know is quite broad, reductions or perceived reductions in benefits. We know that over time, agencies, they don't necessarily offer everything that they used to or have specialized, or benefits have changed, funding has changed, and so someone might come to an agency and expect to receive a service they got there 5 years ago that's no longer provided by the agency. Or sometimes, we get calls from individuals who say, well, my friend went to this place and this is the service they got, so I want the same service, but they simply might not qualify for it for whatever reason. Problems filing with paperwork, problems with agency staff, and a common a grievance or call that we'll get is that people are under the impression that what has happened is that their case manager is no longer at the agency, and so they probably have a new case manager, but it's unclear to them, what has happened with their case. And so what can be helpful is that when they've reached out to us as a third party and then we connect them with the new case manager, it seems that can be more effective for them in building trust if they're having a problem understanding what has happened with a change in the agency staff from their perspective. The way that the mediations work, where the parties come in to meet with the mediator, Cassie touched on this briefly, but I'd like to talk about it in a little more detail. The Center for Conflict Resolution uses a really specific type of mediation, which is called a facilitative mediation model. You may have interacted with mediation in a lot of different circumstances, but we're really particular about the model that we use. And in our work, the mediator doesn't provide advice the way that an attorney would, nor do they make a decision the way that a judge or an arbitrator might. Their job is simply to help facilitate a focused and productive conversation about whatever has been happening between the parties. For the majority of the mediation, we try to keep parties in the same room together and focus the conversation between them, though the mediator might take breaks where they meet with each party separately. In the event that the parties come to an agreement or a plan or a resolution of any kind, that's something that the mediator will memorialize in writing, and it's a document that everyone in the mediation signs and leaves with a copy of. And so some examples, of cases where we've had mediations, was where an individual, a client had felt like they had been discriminated against and that they weren't receiving the services that they thought they deserved at the agency. And the representative from the agency believed that the client had simply misbehaved, too many times, and that they weren't sure that it was safe to receive services. And so they were able to come to the mediation and have a conversation about that, to talk about the challenging interactions that they had had in the past and that the client had had with other staff, to talk about what the expectations were for services. And while the agency was not able to continue to provide services to this particular client, they were able to assist them in accessing alternative services so that they could continue to get their needs met, and give them some advice and recommendations around that. Mediations at CCR are a free resource, and while in a lot of the cases that what we're talking about today, the mediations come through, they're referred through the grievance line, they can also be self-referred. They don't have to come through that hotline. A benefit of the mediation, of course, is that it does not cost money to the parties, but also that it empowers the parties to control the outcome of the case. The reason that we use that facilitative model that I discussed before is because we believe that it's really important for the parties themselves to determine what's going to work for them. If the mediator were to simply make a decision for them, that might not actually work for the parties. And so we want to make sure that any agreement that they might come to really works for them. The mediation can also help with the time for clients and agency representatives. They are given a lot more of an opportunity to really express themselves and to have a candid and open conversation. Mediations are scheduled for 2 to 4 hours. They don't have to take that much time, but they often do. And using mediation can facilitate a more efficient use of the agency's resources. Right, so where a client has a complaint or a grievance, they might be making repeated calls to a lot of different individuals in the agency, none of which are really headed towards a resolution, but all of which might be requiring some agency resources. And the chance to sit down and have a conversation face-to-face in a mediation can be really helpful when it resolves the issue, because it can end that sort of repeated use of agency resources to no avail. Also, it's a neutral process. So the mediators are trained to be neutral. They don't have an interest in what the parties decide or even in whether or not the parties come to any type of agreement. The mediator's role is to just help them have that conversation. So the mediator isn't going to try to push for an agreement or try to tell anyone what they should do in order to access it. So clients can self-refer through the hotline. They would do that by calling the number, which I will show you in a minute on the next slide. And like I said, then we return those calls. Alternatively, a caseworker can refer, and that can happen by either calling CCR directly or also by calling the hotline number. That number is available to anyone to use. And the agency can also make a referral. So it doesn't have to be the individual caseworker, a supervisor, or someone else might choose to make a referral. We are also a resource in some of the other types of cases that Kathy was talking about earlier. So parties don't have to have an open court case to access mediation services at CCR, and we have no income requirement. So our services are available to anyone who's interested in them. And at the outset, we don't even need to have both parties on board. We will reach out to the other party. So if you had a client who maybe you weren't having a conflict with, but they were having a really hard time with their neighbor, for example, or their landlord, we might be a good resource for them for a referral to mediation. And we would talk to the client and get contact information and reach out to that neighbor or landlord directly and talk to them and invite them to participate in the mediation. We schedule it at a time that's going to work for everybody, and the mediations take place at our office, which is located downtown. So the resources are not limited to conflicts that might be happening within the agency or between the client and their receipt of service, but are really available in any type of case. We also offer all parts of our mediation services in Spanish. We have a full-time bilingual programs manager on staff, as well as Spanish-speaking mediators trained in our process. Where one party speaks Spanish and the other party does not, we typically provide the mediation service in English and invite the Spanish speaker to bring anyone that they trust to interpret for them. The same thing is true for people whose native language is not English in any other case. And so the last thing I want to leave you with here before we talk about training is the hotline itself. So this is the number, the 1-866-CARE-212. There are posters, and also we have small palm cards that they look like little business cards available, which can be a good resource. And I think we can discuss later how we might be able to get those to you. There are some here, yeah, at Maytech. So you can get the posters and those palm cards as well, if you want to have those on hand to make sure that your clients are having access to the hotline. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Perry Karim, the training director, to talk to you about the CCR training.
Yeah, so at CCR we offer a variety of different types of trainings for a variety of different types of clients. The main thing that we offer training in is, of course, mediation, because that's the bulk of the work that we do at CCR. In order to be trained in mediation, typically what the standard is a 40-hour mediation skills training, which we offer through our agency 5 times a year for the public. We also offer group rates for that training, so if you think that mediation training might be something that your agency is interested in, or that you might have some staff members who would be, it would be really good for your agency if they were trained in mediation, that's an opportunity that we offer through our agency. We also do a full 40-hour mediation skills training for private organizations who may want to get their whole staff or a portion of their staff trained in mediation. We can also do training in mediation in as little as a half day to a full day or multiple days, depending on your context. If you are doing work where your agency is serving as a go-between, customer service, mediation might be a good training program for you. We also offer training in conflict management and resolution. That's more focused on interpersonal conflict management. So in this training, we focus on how to deal with conflicts that you are involved in or that you are managing as a supervisor or case manager. That training can, again, be in as short as a half day, 3 to 4 hours, or can go on multiple days depending on the needs of your agency. We customize all of our trainings for our clients. So we would be working with simulated conflicts that are very familiar to your organization. We would work with you to develop a training that meets the needs of your staff members. We train on negotiation and communication as well. So we can provide a variety of different types of trainings for our clients. And as I said, we work with all different types of organizations. So we do training for large corporations, law firms, and a lot of the work that we do is with nonprofit organizations. For all of those trainings, we're able to provide continuing education credits. So we are a certified provider of, or an accredited provider of social work CEUs. We also can provide SHRM credits for anyone who's working in human resources. Under the CARE program, we offer training for organizations who are Part A funded. That training is a one-day training, typically from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We offer it 4 times per year. And in that training, we cover a variety of different topics under the heading of conflict management. This is a great training for people who are working directly with clients. This is a great training for people who work with other people. This is a great training for people who supervise. This is a good training if you have any other interactions with other human beings, generally speaking. So the different skills that we are training in are skills that are universally applicable. That training starts with causes of conflict. So we talk about ways that conflict can arise, things like miscommunication, assumptions, worldview, technology. We talk about conflict styles. So we do that using the Thomas Kilmann mode instrument, which is an excellent tool that essentially allows you to think about how you want to strategically approach conflict. Using that tool, we work with groups to help analyze what the dominant conflict styles of your agency and your dominant styles might look like and how they may be effective or ineffective, and ways to use the TKI as a model for determining which approach might be most effective in a given situation. We talk about interest-based bargaining, which is the foundational philosophy and theory that our mediation process is based off of. So we talk about how you can ask effective questions and explore issues in order to get to the real root issues, the underlying needs and interests that may be fueling positions that people have in conflict. We talk about communication skills, how to frame conversations effectively, how to ask good questions. We talk about mediation, so what is the difference when you are serving in more of a neutral capacity than when you are involved directly in the conflict. I know that informal mediation happens a lot in the work that you do, where you are asked to essentially step in and help people figure things out when it comes to conflict, and we go over that a little bit in this training. And then we do a lot more in depth about the care hotline and how to utilize it and how it can be a resource for you and for your clients. I've also been told that this training is one of the least boring continuing education trainings out there, so we also provide lunch in that training. So if you're thinking about checking it out, I really encourage you to do that. We hold these trainings at the Center for Conflict Resolution, and we will be publishing some upcoming dates for that by the end of the week. So we'll have those for you. I think we've got one coming up in October, so keep an eye out on that. We will be putting that on the Maytech calendar. So look for that shortly. So the goals of the training that we provide under the care hotline are to increase awareness of how conflicts arise, to create strategic responses to managing conflict. I can't really stress that enough, that so many times because of limitations in resources, limitations in time itself, we are asked to respond to things in the moment when we may be having our minds on other things. We may not have access to all of the resources we'd like to have. And this training really helps you build a toolbox of approaches that you can access, and helps you build that toolbox that you're already utilizing to become more effective. To practice and build skills around conflict resolution, we are a huge believer in the fact that if I were to ask you to think about how you would want to respond to conflict or how you think conflict should be resolved, I think everyone can wrap their minds around it. They're not, really advanced concepts. They're pretty basic concepts. But until you practice them, until you're given a situation, until you're asked to do it in the moment, it's much more difficult to do it in the moment than it is to think about how you would like to do it. So we try to practice. We build in a variety of different ways of practicing throughout the training. So we work with different scenarios that may be familiar to you. We work with some role playing during the training. So it's a very dynamic training. Another goal is to understand your personal approaches to conflict. Self-awareness is a huge part of conflict resolution, realizing what role you're playing in the situation and how your responses to conflict may be effective or ineffective given what your goals are as an outcome in that conflict. And then lastly, to see conflict as an opportunity for positive change. We at CCR really believe that, conflict is actually a good thing. And most people think that we sound a little bit crazy when we say that, but ultimately, without conflict, we don't know that things aren't working. Without conflict, we're not faced with the immediate opportunity to make things work better. And so, through the course of this training, we hope that our participants are able to see that when conflict arises, it's really an opportunity as opposed to a negative a negative situation that is going to have negative impacts on the agency. So how this training will help you, it improves relationships with clients and colleagues, and relationships at home too. Oftentimes when people come to the training, they bring several of their colleagues, so there's usually somebody that is from your agency, or you may decide to sign up with some of your colleagues. It's a really great opportunity to see how communication could be improved or how approaches can be improved. And I've even had the experience where people have left the training and they say, I have 30 years of experience in my field and I feel like I'm really nailing it when it comes to conflict resolution, but I feel like I should go home and talk to my wife, maybe a little bit differently. So, like I said, these skills are universally applicable. It creates mindfulness about how we approach conflict. I think that just as beneficial as walking away with something new, it's equally beneficial to walk away with the understanding that the things that we're doing are successful and that some of the approaches that we've been taking are really the right approaches. Having that extra sort of understanding that, this seems right, but now I've got a room full of people telling me that this was a really good strategy or a good approach. That's a huge benefit. It gives you proven strategies to approach conflict. At CCR, we have 38 years of experience. We've been mediating tens of thousands of cases in that time. And we know that these strategies work because we've seen them work in those situations. So you've got, we've got the history and the experience to back up the approaches that we are talking about. Resources for you and for your clients. One of the things that I always like to point out is that maybe you will not find this situation in which you need to utilize mediation. Maybe the work that you do with your clients doesn't require mediation, but I guarantee you your clients are probably having conflicts with other people that are not part of your job. You are providing services and they've got a problem with their neighbor, or they've got a problem with their sister-in-law, or they've got a problem with somebody else, and that is not something that you are getting paid to help them with. And it's really not something that is within your job description. CCR can provide a resource for them to sit down and have a conversation with that person. We can help facilitate a conversation or facilitate a mediation where they can really have the chance to work on their own problems, and then you get the credit for it because you've referred them to this great resource. And then this training will also help you by giving you perspective on where conflict comes from. It helps us be more mindful about where our blind spots might be. And lastly, like I said, CEUs. If you're looking to get some continuing education, we provide a lot of different kinds, and we're happy to provide those for you. So I guess now we'll open it up for some questions. One speaker.
All guests have been unmuted.
Hello everyone, this is Estella. If you could please mute your phones unless you're ready to ask a question, but please Our guests are here ready to answer your questions. You can do so via chat as well. Well, I have a question if we have some time. This is Estella, and I wanted to know, do you ever go out into the neighborhoods and provide services directly into the neighborhoods, or do you pretty much stick to the downtown area?
So if we are referred a case from a referral partner that can help us out with a space, we're happy to send mediators to locations that might be more convenient for folks. We only have the one set of offices, so we don't have space in other parts of the city. But you know, if you worked at an agency on the west side and you have, you know, a conference room space that we could use for a mediation, and if the referring partner is willing to assist us in setting that all up, we're happy to send a mediator to the location to do the mediation there.
And another quick question, do you ever do mediations via online, or are they always in person?
They are always in person.
I'll just also say that if you were looking for training for your agency outside of the trainings we provide under CARE, we are happy to travel. We will go to any agency to provide conflict resolution training. You know, send us a message, and we're happy to talk about what type of training and where you'd like to hold it. Are there any other questions?
Thoughts, questions, challenges?
Yeah.
Well, if there are no questions, we can complete this webinar. You can always send, if you have questions later on, we will send you, oh, I see someone's typing, hold on. We have a few folks typing. Thank you, Judith.
Thanks, Judith.
You're welcome.
I just have one quick question before we end. Now, I know some folks who work in the clinic setting, like for instance here at UIC, we have an in-house department that handles these you know, types of subjects and things. Do you ever work in conjunction with other departments like that?
Absolutely, and we certainly aren't trying to override or disregard that. So that when I was talking about sort of how sometimes what we end up doing is just connecting folks into that process that's already there, it might be something as simple as what the internal process is, or even knowing that there's a part of the agency like here that's focused on that kind of work. So we will work to either get people connected to the resource in-house or work with that part of the agency to try to assist in resolving what's going on.
I also would say, just kind of building on Perry's point earlier about conflict being an opportunity, if you get a call from us because we've gotten a hotline call, don't see that as a negative thing. You know, see that as a good thing that, you know, we're able to come in and help, you know, however we can, and hopefully it'll help the agency function more effectively and the relationships improve. You shouldn't feel like it's a negative thing or a bad thing if you get a call from us about a hotline call.
Yeah, and honestly, I've never called an agency representative and had them not know what I was talking about. You know, usually these are, you know, situations that that you all also know the way things are going isn't working. You know, and the hope is that by getting us engaged for a brief period of time, we can help make that dynamic a lot better for everyone involved, including the staff.
And I just wanted to say that with all the changes happening, you know, again in funding, the healthcare system, things of that nature, I think this is an excellent resource, you know, for folks because, you know, sometimes people just don't know where to turn to. And if you can give them that, point them in the right direction, to your services, that'll be hugely, hugely beneficial to individuals and to families, and to really entire communities. For that, I want to say thank you for that.
Thanks all of you for the work that you do as well. What you're doing is so important for the community in any way that we can be making your lives a little bit easier or give you some resources. We are happy to do that.
Yeah. And so what I'll do, I have everyone's email address, and I will forward you information, additional information. And if you ever come to a program here at Maytech, I do have the little business cards. You can take little stacks of them and put them out at your front desk for folks to take. Those are always available here at Maytech. So I think we're pretty much done.
If you come to the training, you get those cards too. We've got them at the trainings. And posters. And the posters.
Awesome. So we have a lot of resources for you available. And again, if there's any questions, you can contact them directly, or you can contact them through me, and I'll put you in contact with someone at CCR. So thank you for your time, and if you could take a few minutes, just a few minutes to complete the post-program survey, again, only 5 questions, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, sir. Bye.